The Woman They Threw Away. Part 1. The Expulsion. The rain had been falling since dawn. Cherry stood by the kitchen window, watching droplets race down the glass, while a pot of soup simmered quietly on the stove. It should have felt like an ordinary Saturday, but something felt wrong. The uneasiness had been following her all week. At 46 years old, Cherry had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, her instinct for screaming. The front door opened. Tim walked in carrying grocery bags. The moment he saw her face, he frowned. "What's wrong?" Cherry forced a smile. "Nothing." Tim set the bags down. "Cherry," she sighed, "I don't know. I just have a bad feeling." Tim wrapped his arms around her waist. "A bad feeling about what?" "I don't know." He kissed her forehead. "Then don't worry about it. If only it were that simple. Because sometimes disaster arrives quietly, without warning, without mercy. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late." The next morning, Tim's mother called. Her voice sounded unusually cold. "We're having a family meeting." Tim frowned. "About what?" "Just come." "When?" "Today." Tim looked confused. His mother rarely sounded so serious. "Fine. And bring Cherry." The line disconnected. Tim stared at his phone. Cherry was standing nearby. What did she want? A family meeting. Cherry's stomach tightened. What kind of family meeting? "I don't know." Neither of them noticed the storm gathering. The family estate sat on a hill overlooking the town, a large house that had belonged to Tim's family for generations. Cherry had been coming there for 15 years. 15 years of birthdays, Christmas dinners, anniversaries, family barbecues. She had always believed she belonged. Today she would discover how wrong she was. The moment they entered, Cherry felt the tension. Everyone was already there. Tim's brother, his sister, several aunts, 2 uncles, even cousins she hadn't seen in years. Nobody smiled. Nobody greeted her warmly. Instead, they exchanged uncomfortable glances. Cherry's heart began to race. Something was wrong. Very wrong. They all gathered in the living room. Silence filled the space. Then Tim's father stood. His expression was grim. "We need to discuss the future of this family." Tim crossed his arms. "What does that mean?" His father looked toward Cherry, and suddenly she understood. The future, children, inheritance, legacy, the same subject that had haunted her marriage for years. She felt sick. For 15 years, Cherry had wanted a child, more than anything. The first miscarriage had shattered her. The second nearly destroyed her. The third left her numb. The fourth took something from her that never fully returned. Hope, doctors, specialists, procedures, prayer groups, natural remedies. Nothing worked. Every time she thought she was finally becoming a mother, life took the baby away, and each loss left a scar. Invisible, permanent, painful. Tim had always supported her, never blamed her, never criticized her, never made her feel less than. His family, however, that was another story. Tim's mother stood. Her voice was sharp. "How old are you now, Cherry?" The question stunned everyone. Cherry blinked. 46. His mother nodded slowly. "And menopause is approaching." The room fell silent. Tim immediately looked angry. "Mom," but she continued, "we've all been discussing it." Cherry's pulse quickened. Discussing what? Tim's brother leaned forward. "The reality is difficult." Cherry felt her hands tremble. "What reality?" His sister answered. "The reality that there will probably never be children." The words hit her like a punch. Even after years of disappointment, hearing someone say it aloud hurt. A lot. Tim stood. "Enough." His mother ignored him. "Our family name ends with you?" Tim stared at her. "What?" His father nodded. "You are our only son." Tim looked disgusted. So someone needs to think about the future." Cherry suddenly felt like she couldn't breathe, because she knew where this conversation was heading, and she didn't want to hear it. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Tim's mother looked directly into Cherry's eyes. "We think it's time for you to step aside." Cherry froze. The room vanished. The air disappeared from her lungs. "What?" His mother didn't blink. "You heard me." Tim slammed his hand against the table. "Have you lost your mind?" His father stood. "Watch your tone." "No," Tim shouted. "You don't get to talk about my wife like she's a problem to solve." Cherry sat motionless. her ears ringing, her heart pounding. His mother folded her arms. "We've waited 15 years. Tim looked horrified. "Waited for what?" "For you to realize she's not the right woman for your future." The room exploded. Tim shouted. Cherry cried. Relatives began arguing. But over the chaos, one sentence stood out. One sentence she would remember forever. His mother pointed directly at her. "You have failed this family." The words sliced through Cherry's heart. She felt every miscarriage, every hospital visit, every tear, every prayer, every disappointment, all thrown back in her face, as though she had chosen this, as though she had wanted this pain. Cherry stood. Her legs felt weak. "I should leave." Tim immediately grabbed her hand. No, but she was already walking away, because staying any longer would break her. The drive home was silent. Cherry stared out the window. Neither of them spoke. What was there to say? The damage had already been done. That night she cried in the bathroom, alone. She didn't want him to see, didn't want him to hear, didn't want him to carry her pain yet again. But Tim heard anyway. He always did. He knocked softly. "Cherry?" No response. "Please open the door." She unlocked it. Tim entered and found her sitting on the floor, broken. Tears streamed down her face. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered the words she had been terrified to say. "What if they're right?" Tim stared at her. What if I've ruined your life?" His face immediately hardened. "Never say that." "But, never." His voice cracked. "You are my life." Cherry burst into tears. Tim held her while she cried. Held her as though letting go might cause her to disappear. And for a moment, everything felt okay. But outside their home, Tim's family was already making plans. Plans that would tear their marriage apart. Plans that neither of them saw coming. And the worst betrayal of all would come from someone they trusted. The woman they threw away. Part 2. Whispers in the dark. Cherry barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the words again. "You have failed this family." The sentence echoed through her mind like a curse. By morning, her eyes were swollen from crying. Tim sat across from her at breakfast. Neither of them touched their food. The silence felt heavy, painful. Finally, Tim pushed his plate away. "I'm going to talk to them." Cherry immediately shook her head. "No." They crossed a line. "No, Tim." His jaw tightened. "They humiliated you." Cherry looked down. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your family." Tim reached across the table. "You are my family." The tears returned instantly. For 15 years, this man had loved her through every heartbreak, every miscarriage, every failed treatment, every disappointment. He never blamed her, not once. But she knew the pressure he was under. His family wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. Meanwhile, across town, another family meeting was taking place. This time, Cherry wasn't invited. Neither was Tim. His mother sat at the head of the dining table. Everyone listened carefully. "We need to act quickly." Tim's older brother nodded. "I agree." His aunt sighed. "He's too attached to her." "That's the problem," his mother replied. The room fell silent. Then Tim's sister spoke. "What exactly are we planning?" His mother exchanged a glance with her husband. Then she said something that shocked even some of the relatives. "We make him choose." The room went quiet. Very quiet. One cousin looked uncomfortable. "You mean between us and Cherry?" "Exactly." Several family members exchanged nervous glances. Even for them, that sounded extreme. But Tim's mother wasn't finished. "If he won't leave her willingly, then we force the issue." The words hung in the air. Cold, cruel, dangerous. And nobody realized how far she was willing to go. 3 days later, Cherry received a phone call. The number was unfamiliar. She almost didn't answer. "Hello." The voice on the other end was soft. "Female? Older? Cherry?" "Yes." There was hesitation. Then the woman spoke. "You don't know me." Cherry frowned. "Who is this?" "My name is Margaret." The name meant nothing. "I'm sorry, but I was at the family meeting." Cherry froze. Her heartbeat accelerated. Margaret continued. "What they did to you was wrong." Cherry sat down, suddenly feeling weak. "Thank you. I called because you need to be careful." The words sent chills down Cherry's spine. Careful. There was a long pause. Then Margaret whispered, "They're planning something." Cherry's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I don't know everything." "What do you know?" Another pause. Then, "Your mother-in-law isn't finished." The line went dead. Cherry stared at her phone, terrified. That evening, Tim came home exhausted. Cherry immediately told him about the call. His face darkened. "This is getting ridiculous. You don't think she's serious?" Tim sighed. "I don't know." But deep down, he did know, because he had seen that look in his mother's eyes before. The look she got when she decided something had to happen, no matter who got hurt, no matter the cost. And that frightened him. The following weekend brought another blow. Tim and Cherry attended church as usual. They had gone there for years. It was one of the few places where Cherry felt at peace. But this Sunday was different. People stared, whispered, avoided eye contact. Cherry noticed immediately. Something felt wrong. Very wrong, as she walked past the women she had known for years. Their conversation abruptly stopped. They looked guilty, embarrassed, ashamed. Cherry's heart sank. After the service, she finally approached one of them. "Is something wrong?" The woman looked uncomfortable. "No, please tell me." The woman hesitated, then quietly asked, "Are the rumors true?" Cherry frowned. "What rumors?" The woman looked horrified. "You don't know." A cool sensation spread through Cherry's body. "Know what?" The answer nearly destroyed her. People were saying she had deliberately prevented Tim from becoming a father. People were saying she had hidden medical information. People were saying she was selfish, manipulative, deceitful. Cherry felt physically sick. Who started this? The woman lowered her eyes. She didn't need to answer. Cherry already knew. That night, Tim exploded. For the first time in 15 years of marriage, Cherry saw genuine rage in him. He stormed into his parents' house. His mother opened the door. The moment she saw his face, she knew. "You!" Tim's voice shook with fury. "How dare you?" His mother remained calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liar." The word echoed through the hallway. His father appeared. "Watch your mouth." Tim pointed directly at them. "You've been spreading lies about Cherry." "No, stop lying." The shouting attracted relatives. Within minutes, the entire house was watching. Tim stood in the center of the room, furious, heartbroken, disgusted. His mother folded her arms. "We only told people the truth." Tim laughed bitterly. "The truth. She's not giving you children." The room fell silent. Tim looked at the woman who raised him, and for the first time in his life, he barely recognized her. Back home, Cherry sat alone in the dark. She had turned off every light. The house felt different now, smaller somehow, lonelier. The phone suddenly rang. She answered. No response, just breathing, heavy breathing. Then a voice whispered, "You should leave while you still can." The call disconnected. Cherry dropped the phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Someone was targeting her. Someone wanted her gone. And she was beginning to fear they wouldn't stop until they got exactly what they wanted. 2 weeks later, another shock arrived. Cherry opened the mailbox. Inside was a plain white envelope. No return address. No name. Nothing. She opened it carefully. A single photograph fell into her hand. Cherry stared, confused, then horrified. The picture showed Tim, standing beside another woman. They appeared close. Very close. Too close. Cherry felt her blood run cold. Her breathing became shallow. The photograph slipped from her fingers. Had Tim betrayed her, or was someone trying to destroy her marriage? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. The war against her had entered a new phase, and whoever was behind it had just made their most dangerous move yet. The woman they threw away. Part 3. The photograph. Cherry stared at the photograph for nearly an hour. She sat motionless at the kitchen table. The image lay in front of her. Tim, and another woman. The woman was attractive, elegant, younger than Cherry. They appeared to be standing outside a restaurant, laughing, comfortable, familiar. To familiar. Cherry's stomach twisted. For weeks she had been fighting off attacks from Tim's family. Rumors, threats, humiliation. Now this. A part of her wanted to believe it was fake. Another part whispered something far more frightening. What if it wasn't? The front door opened. Tim was home. Cherry quickly wiped her tears. But it was too late. He had already seen them. Cherry? She looked up, holding the photograph. Tim frowned. What is that? Without speaking, she slid it across the table. His expression changed immediately. Confusion, then surprise, then anger. Where did you get this? It came in the mail. Tim picked it up. His face darkened. Oh my God. Cherry swallowed hard. Who is she? Tim looked Stan. Her name is Sarah. The answer hurt more than she expected. The fact he knew the name immediately. Cherry felt tears forming again. You know her? Tim sighed heavily. Yes. Cherry's heart dropped. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Then Tim sat down. Cherry, please let me explain. Sarah Turner worked at Tim's company. She had been hired 2 years earlier. That photograph had been taken during a business dinner. Several colleagues had attended, but the photo had been cropped. Whoever sent it had intentionally removed everyone else, leaving only Tim and Sarah visible, creating a completely different story, a completely different picture. Cherry listened quietly. She wanted to believe him, but fear was a powerful thing, and fear had been living inside her for weeks. Why would someone send this? Tim already knew the answer, because someone wanted them to fight. Someone wanted to destroy their marriage. Someone wanted Cherry to leave. The realization hit both of them at the same time. This wasn't random. It was planned, carefully planned, and that made it even more dangerous. The next morning brought another surprise. Cherry's phone rang. It was Margaret, the woman who had warned her before. Cherry? Yes. Margaret sounded nervous. We need to meet. Cherry sat upright. What happened? Not over the phone. Why? A long pause followed. Then Margaret whispered, because they're talking about replacing you. Cherry felt her blood run cold. What? You need to hear this in person. They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Margaret looked around repeatedly before sitting down, as though she was afraid someone had followed her. Cherry immediately noticed how anxious she looked. What is going on? Margaret took a deep breath, then spoke. Last week I overheard a conversation. Cherry leaned forward. Between who? Tim's mother and your sister-in-law. Cherry's stomach tightened, and Margaret hesitated, then delivered the blow. They've already chosen another woman. The world seemed to stop. What? They think Tim would be happier with someone younger. Cherry stared, unable to speak. Margaret continued. They've even discussed introducing them. The words felt unreal, cruel, almost impossible, yet somehow believable, because after everything that had happened, nothing surprised Cherry anymore. That evening Tim came home to find Cherry sitting silently in the living room. She looked pale, exhausted, broken. He immediately sat beside her. What happened? Cherry told him everything, every word, every detail. The color drained from Tim's face. Then came the anger, pure anger, the kind that had been building for weeks. Enough was enough. For 15 years he had tried to keep peace. For 15 years he had balanced loyalty to his wife and loyalty to his family. No more. That night he drove straight to his parents' house. The confrontation was explosive. His mother was sitting in the living room when he arrived. She barely looked surprised, almost as though she had been expecting him. Tim didn't sit down, didn't greet anyone, didn't waste time. Did you choose another woman for me? The room froze. His mother's expression hardened. Who told you that? So it's true. Silence. That was all the answer he needed. Tim laughed, but there was no humor in it. Only disappointment. Only pain. Unbelievable. His father entered the room. Calm down. No. Tim turned toward them both. For weeks you've attacked my wife. Nobody responded. You spread rumors. Silence. You humiliated her. Silence. You tried to destroy my marriage. Still silence. Then his mother finally spoke. We're trying to save your future. Tim stared at her, and something inside him snapped. No. His voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. You are destroying it. For the first time ever, Tim gave his family an ultimatum. If you don't stop this ... His father frowned. Stop what? This obsession with Cherry. His mother folded her arms. And if we don't? Tim's answer shocked everyone. Then I'm done. The room went silent. His sister gasped. His brother stared. Even his father looked stunned. What do you mean? Tim looked directly at them. I mean exactly what I said. His mother laughed nervously. You wouldn't cut off your family. Tim's eyes never left hers. Watch me. For the first time, she looked uncertain. For the first time, she realized she might actually lose her son. Meanwhile, Cherry sat alone at home, waiting, worrying, praying. She had no idea that events were already moving beyond anyone's control. Because while Tim was confronting his family, someone else was making plans. Dangerous plans. Plans hidden from everyone, even Tim's parents. 3 days later, Cherry received another envelope. This one was thicker, heavier. Inside were several documents, medical records, photocopies, doctor reports. At first they made no sense. Then she noticed a name. Tim's name. Cherry frowned. Why would someone send Tim's medical records? She looked closer. Her heart began to pound. The document was old, very old, nearly 16 years old. Just before their marriage, she kept reading, then suddenly stopped. The room spun around her. The words blurred. She blinked repeatedly, certain she was misunderstanding, certain she was reading it wrong. But the sentence remained the same. The report suggested that Tim, not Cherry, might have fertility problems. Cherry dropped the papers, her hands trembling, her breathing uneven. Could it be true? Had everyone blamed the wrong person all these years? Had Tim's family destroyed her life over a lie? Or was this another trap? Another attempt to manipulate her? Cherry didn't know, but she did know one thing. The answer to that question could destroy an entire family. And someone out there clearly wanted the truth to come out, no matter who got hurt. The woman they threw away. Part 4. The secret they buried. Cherry sat frozen on the couch. The documents lay scattered across the coffee table. Tim's name stared back at her from every page. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. For 15 years she had carried the blame. 15 years. 15 years of whispers, pitying looks, cruel comments, questions she never wanted to answer. Questions she had learned to smile through. No children yet. Have you thought about adoption? Maybe God has another plan. The words had followed her everywhere, and behind those words was always the same assumption. That the problem was her. That she had somehow failed as a wife, failed as a woman, failed as a future mother. Now she stared at papers suggesting something entirely different. Something capable of turning her entire world upside down. The front door opened. Tim walked in. The moment he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. What happened? Cherry couldn't answer immediately. Instead, she handed him the documents. Tim looked confused. Then he began reading. The color drained from his face. A long silence followed. Then another, and another. Finally, he sat down, hard, as though his legs could no longer support him. Where did you get these? They came in the mail. Tim stared at the papers. His expression had changed. Cherry noticed immediately. There was confusion, shock, and something else. Something she couldn't quite identify. Fear. Tim ... His hands trembled. Cherry had never seen that before. Not once in 15 years. Do you know anything about this? Tim rubbed his forehead. His breathing became uneven. For several moments he said nothing, then quietly spoke. Maybe. Cherry's stomach dropped. Maybe. What does that mean? Tim closed his eyes. The answer took a long time to come. Before we got married ... Cherry listened carefully. There were tests. The room seemed to grow quieter. What tests? Tim looked down. Fertility tests. Cherry felt her pulse quicken. You never told me. I didn't think they mattered. Didn't matter. Tim looked miserable. The doctor wasn't certain. Cherry's voice shook. What did he say? Tim swallowed. He said I might have a low chance of fathering children naturally. The room went completely silent. Cherry couldn't believe what she was hearing. For 15 years she had carried the burden. For 15 years she had blamed herself. And all this time, Tim had known there might be another explanation. Cherry stood up. Not because she was angry, because she felt dizzy. Everything she believed suddenly felt uncertain. Why didn't you tell me? Tim's eyes filled with regret. I was ashamed. The honesty in his voice broke her heart. I thought if I ignored it, maybe it wasn't true. Cherry sat down again, slowly, carefully, trying to process everything. Tim looked devastated. I never wanted you to carry this alone. She looked at him. But I did. His face crumpled. Because she was right. She had. The following morning, they scheduled an appointment with a fertility specialist. A new doctor, a fresh evaluation. No assumptions, no family opinions, only facts. For the first time in years, they wanted answers. Real answers. No matter how painful, no matter who they hurt. Meanwhile, Tim's mother was becoming increasingly frustrated. Her plan wasn't working. Cherry was still there. Tim was still loyal. And worst of all, he had stopped answering her calls. The woman who had once controlled every aspect of her son's life was losing her influence. She hated it. At dinner that night, she slammed her fork onto the table. This has gone too far. Her husband sighed. Leave them alone. She looked at him sharply. You've changed. No. His voice was tired. I'm just tired of hurting people. The statement surprised everyone, even himself. For the first time, guilt was beginning to creep in. Because deep down, he remembered things, conversations, doctor appointments, things he had ignored years ago, things he wished he hadn't. A week later, Tim and Cherry sat together inside the fertility clinic. The waiting room felt strangely familiar. Hospitals had become a painful part of their lives. The doctor entered carrying a file, a thick file, their file. He sat down, opened it, then looked at them. There are things you need to know. Cherry immediately felt nervous. Tim squeezed her hand. The doctor continued. I reviewed your medical history. He turned several pages, then looked directly at Tim. Your previous doctor had concerns. Tim nodded slowly. I remember. The doctor sighed. Those concerns were valid. The room became very still. Cherry's heart pounded. Tim looked down. The doctor continued carefully. There were fertility challenges on both sides. Cherry blinked. Both sides. Yes. The doctor folded his hands. The miscarriages were not your fault, Cherry. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Not your fault. 3 simple words. 3 words she had waited 15 years to hear. The doctor wasn't finished, nor was it entirely Tim's fault. They both listened. The truth is much more complicated. Cherry felt tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time in years, someone was speaking without judgment, without blame, without cruelty, only truth. And truth felt strangely healing. But outside the clinic, someone was watching. A silver car parked across the street. The driver remained hidden behind dark sunglasses, watching, waiting, observing. The moment Tim and Cherry left the building, the driver picked up a phone. They know. A voice answered. Are you sure? Yes. Silence followed. Then a quiet reply. Then it's time. The call ended. The car drove away, and neither Tim nor Cherry noticed, because they were about to uncover a secret far bigger than fertility. A secret buried for over 15 years. A secret capable of destroying the entire family. 2 days later, Margaret called again. This time she sounded terrified. Cherry ... Something was wrong. Very wrong. Margaret, you need to come. Why? There was panic in her voice. Real panic. I found something. Cherry's stomach tightened. What? Margaret lowered her voice, almost to a whisper. I found letters. What letters? The answer sent chills through Cherry's entire body. Letters written by Tim's mother. Cherry froze. What kind of letters? Margaret hesitated, then said the words that would change everything. Letters proving she knew the truth. The world seemed to stop. Cherry couldn't breathe. What truth? Margaret's voice trembled. The truth about the fertility tests. Silence. Dead silence. Then Margaret whispered, Cherry, I think your mother-in-law has been lying for 15 years. And before Cherry could ask another question, the call suddenly disconnected. Not ended, disconnected. As though someone had interrupted it. As though someone didn't want Margaret talking. Cherry stared at the phone, her heart racing. A terrible feeling settled inside her chest. Because for the first time, this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a cover-up. And someone was getting desperate. The woman they threw away. Part 5. The letters. Cherry didn't sleep that night. Margaret's final words echoed endlessly in her mind. I think your mother-in-law has been lying for 15 years. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard them again. Louder, more frightening. Because if that statement was true, then everything changed. Everything. Not just the past. Not just the miscarriages. Not just the blame. Everything. By dawn, Cherry was sitting in the kitchen waiting for Tim to wake up. The moment he entered the room, she told him about the phone call. Every word, every detail. When she finished, Tim looked stunned, then angry, then confused. My mother wouldn't. He stopped himself, because lately he wasn't sure what his mother would or wouldn't do. Not anymore. Cherry could see the conflict in his eyes. The woman who raised him, the woman who loved him, the woman who had spent months trying to destroy his marriage. Those two people no longer seemed like the same person, and Tim was struggling to reconcile them. That afternoon they drove to Margaret's house, a small cottage on the edge of town. The sky was gray. Heavy clouds hung overhead, the kind of weather that made everything feel uneasy. Margaret opened the door almost immediately. She looked nervous, exhausted, as though she hadn't slept either. Come inside. The moment they entered, she locked the door behind them. Tim noticed. So this is serious. Margaret nodded. Very. She led them into the living room. A large brown envelope sat on the coffee table. Cherry's pulse quickened. Is that it? Margaret slowly nodded. These are copies. Tim frowned. Copies of what? Margaret took a deep breath, then opened the envelope. Inside were several handwritten letters. Old letters, yellowed with age. Some dated 16 years earlier, just before Tim and Cherry got married. Cherry felt her stomach tighten. This was it. The moment everything changed. Margaret handed the first letter to Tim. The handwriting belonged to his mother. There was no doubt about it. Tim recognized it instantly. His face went pale. Slowly, he began reading. Halfway through, he stopped. His hands started trembling. Tim. Cherry's voice was barely a whisper. He looked up, his eyes filled with disbelief. Then he handed her the letter. Cherry read it, and her heart nearly stopped. The letter was addressed to Tim's father, written shortly after Tim's fertility testing. One paragraph stood out immediately. The doctor believes Tim may have fertility issues. We cannot allow this information to spread. It would destroy his confidence and damage the family's reputation. Cherry stared, read it again, then again. The words never changed. Her vision blurred. For 16 years, his mother had known, and yet she had allowed Cherry to carry the blame. The second letter was even worse. Cherry could barely believe what she was reading. It detailed conversations between Tim's parents, private conversations, cruel conversations, conversations about finding ways to keep the fertility concerns hidden. One sentence made Cherry physically ill. If there are no children, people will naturally assume the fault lies with the wife. The room became silent. Margaret wiped tears from her eyes. Tim looked sick. Cherry couldn't speak. For several moments, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody knew what to say, because some betrayals are so deep that words become useless. Tim finally stood. His face had changed. The shock was gone. The confusion was gone. Only anger remained. Raw, cold, controlled anger. The most dangerous kind. They knew. His voice shook. They knew all along. Cherry looked down, unable to stop crying. Not because she felt victorious. Not because she had been proven right. Because the truth hurt, more than the lie ever had. For years she had begged herself to be stronger, to try harder, to pray harder, to become somehow worthy, all while carrying a burden that never belonged to her. The realization broke something inside her. 3 days later, Tim requested a family meeting. Not a discussion, not a conversation. A meeting, mandatory. Everyone came. His parents, his brother, his sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, the same people who had sat silently while Cherry was humiliated, the same people who had watched her suffer. This time, however, things would be different. Tim stood in the center of the room, holding the letters. His mother immediately recognized them. The color drained from her face. For the first time, she looked afraid. What are those? Her voice sounded weak. Tim stared at her. You tell me. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The room felt frozen. Then Tim held up the first letter. Recognize this. His mother swallowed hard. His father looked away. That alone told everyone something was wrong. Tim's voice rose. You knew. Silence. You knew before I married Cherry. More silence. You knew there might be fertility issues on my side. His mother's eyes filled with tears. But Tim wasn't interested in tears. Not anymore. For 15 years, Cherry had cried enough for everyone. Answer me. The room jumped. Nobody had ever heard Tim raise his voice like that. Finally, his mother spoke. We were trying to protect you. The excuse exploded like a bomb. Tim laughed bitterly. Protect me. His voice cracked. You destroyed her. Cherry sat quietly, listening, watching. For once she wasn't the one standing trial. For once the spotlight had shifted, and some people couldn't handle it. His mother began crying. Real tears. But nobody rushed to comfort her. Nobody, not even her husband, because everyone was finally seeing the damage, the consequences, the years of suffering, the unnecessary cruelty. His father lowered his head. We made mistakes. Tim stared at him. Mistakes. The words sounded ridiculous. Too small. Far too small. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is taking a wrong turn. This wasn't a mistake. This was 15 years of deception. 15 years of allowing an innocent woman to be blamed. Then Cherry did it. Everyone looked at her. The room became silent. For years she had remained quiet, respectful, patient. Today was different. She looked directly at her mother-in-law, a woman she had once loved, a woman she had once trusted, a woman who had broken her heart. And she asked one simple question. Why? Tears streamed down the older woman's face. I was afraid. Cherry shook her head. Afraid of what? The answer shocked everyone. Afraid people would think less of my son. The room fell silent. Cherry stared, unable to believe what she had heard. After everything, after all the suffering, after all the lies, that was the reason. Pride, nothing more, just pride. For the first time in years, Cherry felt something unexpected. Not anger, not hatred, not revenge, pity, because she realized something. This woman had sacrificed relationships, trust, family, love, all to protect an image, and now she had lost everything anyway. The meeting ended in chaos. Some relatives defended Tim and Cherry. Others remained silent. A few walked out entirely. The family had fractured, perhaps permanently. But the biggest shock came later that evening. Margaret called again. Her voice trembled. Cherry ... Immediately, Cherry knew something was wrong. What happened? Margaret took a shaky breath. The letters aren't the biggest secret. Cherry froze. What do you mean? There was a long pause. Then Margaret said something that made Cherry's blood run cold. I found another document. What document? The answer changed everything. A will. Cherry frowned. A will? Yes. Margaret sounded terrified. The family inheritance was never supposed to go to Tim. Silence. Then, it was supposed to go to the first grandchild. Cherry's heart pounded. Margaret continued. And someone was willing to do anything to make sure that happened. The call ended. Cherry slowly lowered the phone. A terrible realization formed inside her mind. Maybe this was never about grandchildren. Maybe it was never about family legacy. Maybe it was never about infertility. Maybe it had always been about money. And if that was true, the real villain hadn't been exposed yet. The woman they threw away. Part 6. What really mattered? Cherry sat in silence after Margaret's phone call. The words echoed through her mind. The inheritance was supposed to go to the first grandchild. For a long time, she simply stared out the window. The rain had returned. Soft, steady, almost peaceful. Yet inside her heart, a storm was raging. Tim sat beside her. What are you thinking? Cherry looked at him. The miscarriages. Tim squeezed her hand. The blame. His eyes filled with sadness. The rumors. He nodded. Then Cherry whispered the question neither of them wanted to ask. What if none of it was really about children? Tim looked away, because he had started wondering the same thing. A week later, Margaret arrived carrying a thick folder. Inside were copies of legal documents, letters, financial records, property records, and finally, the will. The original family will had been written by Tim's grandfather decades earlier. The estate was enormous. Land, properties, investments, generational wealth. enough money to change lives. The conditions were surprisingly simple. If a grandchild existed, that grandchild would eventually inherit the majority of the estate. If no grandchild existed, ownership would eventually pass differently through the family. The implications were enormous. Cherry immediately understood the pressure, the obsession, the fixation on children. It had never been entirely emotional. Money had been involved from the beginning. A lot of money. But the biggest revelation came from Tim's aunt, the same aunt who had remained silent during most of the conflict. She finally came forward, and what she revealed shocked everyone. Years earlier, shortly after Cherry's second miscarriage, she had overheard an argument between Tim's parents. His father had wanted to tell Tim the truth about the fertility concerns. His mother had refused. The argument had become heated, very heated. According to the aunt, Tim's mother had said something unforgettable. If people think the problem is Cherry, nobody will question the inheritance. The room fell silent. Cherry felt sick. Tim looked devastated. His father lowered his head because he knew it was true. He remembered that conversation, every word, and for years, he had remained silent. The family gathered one final time, not because anyone wanted to, because the truth demanded it. Nobody could move forward until everything had been said. The atmosphere was completely different from the first meeting. Back then, Cherry had sat alone, ashamed, judged. Now the truth stood beside her, and truth is a powerful thing. Tim's mother looked years older. The confidence was gone. The authority was gone. All that remained was regret. She stood slowly, facing Cherry, facing Tim, facing everyone. Tears filled her eyes. For several moments she couldn't speak. Then finally ... I was wrong. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. I convinced myself I was protecting my family. Her voice broke. But I wasn't. She looked directly at Cherry. I was protecting my pride. Cherry remained silent. The older woman continued. I knew there were fertility concerns on both sides. Tears streamed down her face. I knew the miscarriages weren't your fault. Cherry felt her own eyes fill with tears. I knew you were suffering. The room became completely silent. Then came the words Cherry had waited 15 years to hear. The words she thought would make everything better. I am sorry, yet something unexpected happened. The apology didn't erase the pain. It didn't erase the miscarriages. It didn't erase the years of humiliation. It didn't erase the loneliness. Someone simply don't disappear. But it did something else. It allowed Cherry to finally put down the burden she had carried for so long. Because she finally understood something. The problem had never been her. Not 15 years ago. Not now. Not ever. Several months passed. The family remained divided. Some relationships healed. Others didn't. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. But slowly, life moved forward. Cherry started volunteering at a women's support center. There she met women facing infertility, women facing pregnancy loss, women carrying guilt they didn't deserve. For the first time, she shared her own story openly, and every time she did, another woman cried. Another woman felt understood. What had once been her greatest source of pain became a source of healing for others. One afternoon, nearly a year after the family confrontation, Cherry received a phone call. It changed everything. A social worker was calling. A little girl needed a home, temporarily at first, possibly longer. Cherry listened quietly. Her hands trembled. When she hung up, she looked at Tim. Neither of them spoke. Then Tim smiled, the first truly carefree smile she had seen in years. You thinking what I'm thinking? Cherry nodded and burst into tears. 3 months later, a 7-year-old girl named Lily walked through their front door carrying a tiny pink suitcase. She looked nervous. Scared, unsure. Cherry knelt in front of her. Hi, Lily. The little girl looked up. Hi. Cherry smiled softly. Welcome home. The child threw her arms around her, and in that moment, 15 years of grief seemed to loosen its grip. Not disappear, but soften. Just a little. Word eventually reached Tim's family. Some were surprised. Others were emotional. Tim's mother cried when she heard, not because she suddenly deserved forgiveness, but because she finally understood what she had almost destroyed. Love, real love, the kind that doesn't depend on inheritance, the kind that doesn't depend on grandchildren. One evening, nearly 2 years after Cherry had been told to step aside, the family gathered again. This time, Lily was running through the garden, laughing, playing, being a child. Everyone watched her, even Tim's mother. Tears filled her eyes. She walked slowly toward Cherry. "She's beautiful." Cherry nodded. "Yes." There was a long silence. Then the older woman spoke. "I don't expect forgiveness." Cherry looked at her carefully. "No, I know I don't deserve it." Cherry nodded again. "Probably not." The honesty startled them both. Then Cherry smiled gently. "But carrying hatred is exhausting." The older woman began crying, and for the first time in many years, there was no argument, no blame, no accusations, only truth. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Cherry sat on the porch beside Tim. The stars shone brightly above them. Lily slept peacefully inside. Tim wrapped an arm around his wife. "You okay?" Cherry smiled, a real smile, the kind she hadn't worn in years. "Yes." Tim kissed her forehead. "No regrets." Cherry looked toward the house, toward the light shining from Lily's bedroom, toward the life she never expected to have. Then she answered, "Not anymore," because life hadn't given her the story she planned. It had given her a different one, a harder one, a messier one. But in the end, it had also given her something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. And sometimes, hope is enough.